the brunt of the aftermath of the Kanishka bombings by Khalistani terrorists were not only faced by the families of the victims, the witnesses also found it difficult to go back to their normal lives. Threats from terrorists and their associates had become their new normal. Additionally, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and, of course, their partners did little to help. The John C. Major report on the Kanishka bombing extensively mentions how the witnesses were compromised or not taken care of by the RCMP and the Canadian Security Intelligence Services, which is, of course, the CSIS. Instances highlight how the RCMP would often approach the witnesses in public or put them under rigorous and aggressive interrogation for information. The Canadian authorities did not have any concrete strategy to deal with witnesses who were fearful of their lives. Before I open up this conversation to my guests, let's take a look at some of the excerpts from the John C. Major report that clearly show how the RCMP failed to protect its witnesses to a large degree. Well, on your screens you can see an excerpt which says that the CSIS handed Ms. D to the RCMP Air India Task Force after she provided information about Malik. The RCMP Commercial Crime Section also dealt with Ms. D since her information related in all parts to allegations of fraud. Ms. D's name was released when a warrant application was inadvertently left unsealed by the Commercial Crime Section. More of this information, of course, is also shared in this report, where it says that the RCMP members failed to appreciate the threat that Bagri and his associate would pose to Miss E's safety. These are initials which have been used to maintain anonymity. Miss E had a genuine fear for her safety and that of her family as well. Another line which goes on to expose the RCMP. Here again, the highlighted part says that there was perception that until someone had signed on to help, it was premature for the RCMP to think about protection measures. That goes against every security protocol that we have heard of, or for that matter, witness. Of course, then there is the case of Tara Singh as well, who was not given adequate protection and eventually had to lose his life as well. Moving on, the RCMP also approached Mr. A fully knowing that he did not wish to speak to the police. So, of course, the people who wanted to speak to the police, wanted to come as witnesses, were completely ignored by the RCMP, and the ones that were reluctant to say anything against anyone were pressurized by the RCMP. It also showed that the RCMP's insensitivity to the demands of potential witnesses or for protection and other benefits was not met. The RCMP had no strategies for dealing with fearful witnesses. In at least one instance, the RCMP repeatedly contacted a source to attempt to secure her cooperation without trying to meet her concerns. This is, of course, apathy on behalf of the RCMP, which goes on to show that why the Kanishka crash is still unsolved in a major way. Unlike the CSIS, which viewed sources as crown jewels, the RCMP often perceived them as informants or criminals who would be approached with skepticism and who should be expected to put up or shut up. That was the line that was taken by the RCMP. Major General Sudhakarji, VSM veteran, geopolitical and defense expert, joins me on the show. Sumit Peer, political commentator, also with us on the broadcast. Sumit Peer, there is this visible, there is this, very clear image that comes to your mind when you talk about the intelligence services that Canada relies on. These same intelligent, people who have just very recently pointed a finger at India also failed to solve the biggest crime that happened on their soil. 200 plus Canadians were killed. The writing was on the wall. The witnesses wanted to give them more information, but in the garb of acting smart or looking too, being too careful and circumspect, they botched up the entire operation, and the result of it, the consequence of it is, Sumit, that people who lost their loved ones, I have a friend who lost his grandmother to that accident. These people have found no closure till today.
Vineet, thank you very much for having me on your show. In fact, if you look at it very sequentially, Vineet, the point which becomes very clear is this was the intention always. This was the idea always. The idea was somehow to delay, drag, drop, dead. D. So you delay the investigation, you drag the investigations, and you drop it dead one day. That is exactly what happened. When we could complete the investigation by 86 and we could submit them the report, we would tell them everything. Why till date Canadian Royal Mounted Police and the Canadian Intelligence has not been able to complete the report? Because their intention was never to complete the report, because if the report is completed, the people will be identified. When the people are identified, they have to be punished. When the people are punished, the ecosystem will be challenged. Because currently what is happening in Canada is the ecosystem of terror and terrorism, which is being harbored by the government. The patronage is from the government, and even some Khalistanis have even managed to enter into the government, like Jagmeet Singh and all. So with this kind of an ecosystem thriving in Canada, you could imagine, we need this kind of a investigation could never ever be completed. So what did they do? They found a very easy way out, which whoever stood as a witness, whoever stood as a possible person who knew something, they would kind of expose the person and not protect the person. So person automatically became a target, the person automatically became a dartboard, the person automatically became the target of all these Khalistanis, and we have seen instances after instances they were eliminated. And even after the first attack, still they were not given the security, they were waiting for them to ultimately get killed. This happened with them. I mean, if you look at the case of Ripudaman Singh and some others, is exactly happened the same way. Now, here, what happened to this, what is his name, Fatima Baloch? Nothing, nobody was found that. Who killed Ripudaman Singh? Nobody was found till that. So there is a very particular architecture and design where these people are let go, and rather than protecting the perpetrators, rather than protecting these people, you identify them and you make the job of Khalistani ecosystem very easy. So now they exactly know who is the person who is going to talk against them. You know who is the person who can spill the beans. So that person automatically gets eliminated. Others get shit scared. And at the end of the day, more than 87 kids die in that air crash. More than 200 Canadians die. A lot of people lost their loved ones. And still, the biggest terror attack on the soil of Canada before 26/11. Up to that, it was the world's biggest terror attack. You cannot find anybody since last 30 years, 35 years. It is a joke, Vineet. It's a mockery. This talks about how the government of Canada has been hand in glove with them. And this is how they continue to be hand in glove with them. Because today we have a plumber, so-called plumber, who's on a no-fly list. And somebody kills the plumber, and the government of Canada has the gumption to put allegations on the Republic of India, the world's largest democracy. You can see how much of compromised government of Canada is, because ISI has infiltrated everybody through its madrasas, through its the education scheme which is runs in Canada, wherein a madrasa pass kid gets 97% marks, gets admission into a university, then after graduating, he enters into various government streams. That is what is happening. Khalistanis those are government mein hi hai, like people like Jagmeet Singh. So if you see, if K2 desk is really successful anywhere in the world, that is in Canada. Because K for Khalistan, K for Kashmir. Here we have not let them have a foothold. But in Canada, they're absolutely very successful. They're acting to their whims and fancies, and they have even been able to infiltrate the government and the ruling dispensation. If the Prime Minister of Canada is as a mere Katputli in the hands of ISI, we need what else to say. And with such a scenario, I'm telling you, even today, nobody will be caught. What happened to the people who vandalized temples? What happened to the people who were giving threats to our Prime Minister? What happened to the people who were giving threats to action of his minister? Who put these posters of our diplomats and threatened them? What have you done to them? So many temple vandalizations happened. What have you done to them? How many people are caught? How many people have you deported? No. And when we asked you at the right time to about the Kanishka bomber, you would refuse to deport him, and because you said that your relations with the Queen, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's father said your relations with the Queen are not so good. So we will not be able to deport this man who has killed maximum number of Canadians in the worst ever terror attack on Canadian soil. This is hypocrisy of a country beneath. This, if I can be direct, this was only hidden because these people are white in color. They are neighbors of America. They are a G7 country, and that white man supremacy prevailed. Whatever is known about Pakistan is exactly the case of Canada. Canada is the Pakistan of the West. There is no doubt on that. There is nothing they can do to stop it. And Vineet, if you ask me, now the system is rotten to an extent. I don't think any government of Canada can control it. Forget Justin Trudeau. If anybody else comes in, when these ISI agents who are homegrown agents in Canada, who are Canadian citizens and infiltrated your all walks of life, your all government departments. And Khalistanis are a part of your, political system, and without them, the politics doesn't work, the governments do not function. What do we expect there to happen, sir? These unfortunate victims had to meet a fate which was not desirable. But the most important thing here is government of Canada choose to make them sacrificial lambs. They choose not to protect them. They choose to name them and make it easy for Khalistanis to do whatever is happening. I mean, this is very evident, Vinny.
You're absolutely right. General Sudhakarji, we perhaps have spoken for the first time when it comes to this standoff with Canada and this, this influx of, problems that the Khalistanis are creating. We're also talking about the Kanishka crash and how the Canadian government completely bundled and botched up that investigation. Where do you think, on a moral ground, Canada stands today before it says anything to India? Don't you think there are a number of skeletons in their own closet that needs to be addressed before they can lay a finger on us?
Vinit, good evening. Thank you for getting me to your show. I have been traveling for past 5 days, and today I am actually getting a chance to come back to NewsX. I must compliment that this particular issue, it took place in 20th century, 1985. It's coming to limelight in 21st century. The global order dynamics have undergone change. What is the change? The transatlantic power, that is America and Canada across the Atlantic and the European Union and UK. This particular glue which was binding them together in Cold War 1.0 is no longer able to hold them together. Thanks to, in a way, for lack of correct expression, I would say, Russo-Ukraine war, they just about managed to galvanize, and they're holding out. And the apex organization in global order, good, bad, ugly, something is better than nothing, they're holding out. But times have changed. When I said times have changed, the double speak, the double standard, which was quite being forced down our throat, way back in Cold War 1.0, can no longer be taken lightly. Times are changing. The global south has got an aspiration. It is seeking out accountability in global order. White skin cannot rule the world order permanently or eternally. I think our Minister of External Affairs is doing a fabulous job calling it out loud and clearly. That cannot have double standard. Canada today, some of us consider it to be the Pakistan of Western Alliance. I am saying it is Pakistan and China. Don't we know that China has dug in its heel? It has gone in deeper and deeper. The trenches have been dug, Vancouver and all the places. They have united that work department council, which was started by Mao Zedong. It is meant for the disinformation, penetration into the elitist club, changing their mindset, and also buying of the media houses. Aren't the people aware of it? Don't we know that ISI of Pakistan is very, very closely hand in gloves? Don't we know that some of the G7 countries are actually into the network? I don't want to, for lack of traction, having gained on ground in the media circle, I do not, because NewsX is a very mature, responsible international news agency. I would rather, at the cost of my own reputation, and my CIA is deeply involved, MI5 is deeply involved, ISI is involved, everything being orchestrated is by the G7 countries. You call them now as I5 or whatever names. But these people, there is a great conspiracy. When India starts asserting its authority and strategic autonomy, they feel desperate. Why the hell and where has the India come from? Today it is 21st century. This century is of the Asia century. We have not, it is not only Asia century, it is India century. By 2047, it is going to be a totally different India. Now it is a resurgent India. We are not going to take it like this. So therefore, the double-speak unit that you are mentioning, you are absolutely right. How long can they sustain itself? It is basically to divert the attention of their opposition party, of the public people, of the public of Canada, of the Chinese intervention, manipulation of the elections which had taken place in 2021. He basically wants to divert everyone's attention towards something. Otherwise, there is no rational logic of the Prime Minister of Canada having gone back within 7 days, making a blatant statement against the largest democracy. How dare he? Are we that incompetent as Indian citizens in 21st century to take it line? We must give it back nice and properly. Like Sumit has brought out very nicely, this 1985 Kanishka accident, it is the one of its kind, the most violent and the largest aviation disaster which has taken place in 20th century must be brought to book, must be highlighted, and people who have been complicit to this particular incident, they must be held accountable in the International Court of Justice. Canada as a nation state has been deeply involved in architecting the complete design and plan. They have carried out the blast. This is the way we must go about and hold the nation accountable, rather than he pointing a finger at India without any evidence. Back to you, Vinay.
Absolutely. And Sumit, if we are comparing Canada to Pakistan, we should take more initiative in comparing and telling the world why Canada is like Pakistan.
Vineet, the issue here is very simple. Public appoints a government, and if that government, it's a democratically elected government, like in Pakistan, they enact a government. Here, a democratically elected government is supporting terrorism from father to son, is harboring terrorists from father to son, is getting people killed from father to son. Is trying to protect the biggest terrorist attack on humanity was Kanishka before September 11. Father to son, the same modus operandi. And even today, a plumber on a no-fly list, I don't know how many plumbers in Canada are on a no-fly list, becomes a national treasure for you, and you want to go and mess your relations with the world's largest democracy. If this is not blatant and direct support of terror, terrorism, and terror sympathizing, terror funding, giving terrorists their sanctuaries, giving terrorists a safe sanctuary, their own land, their own resources, and political patronage, what else is it? So don't we hold a right to go and put Canada or complain against Canada into FATF if Pakistan and Turkey can be in FATF? Why Canada should not be in FATF? What more proof do you need for Canada to be in FATF? If Pakistan is a terrorist state, why Canada should not be called as a terrorist sanctuary? Because here, again, it's government-sponsored terrorism. It's government-sponsored terrorism, and Pakistan still does not go out of the way to spoil diplomatic relations with India because of a terrorist. These people have gone cross that way, and when they don't have one shred of evidence. Though in Pakistan, every day we have one more terrorist getting killed due to whatever reason. That's a different story altogether. But these people believe that because they are white, these people because they are neighbors of America, these people believe because they are some G7 country, they can get away with it. वो कहते हैं ना 100 खून माफ. That mentality has to be challenged. Why in FATF they should not be a part of the FATF's grey list? Why not? I'm asking that question. Why such a country should not be called out in United Nations? Why such a country should not be declared as a terrorist country? Why such a country should not be declared as a heaven for terrorists, harboring terrorists? And if you are worried about what is happening in your land, go and find just in what is ISI doing there? How are Chinese controlling your real estate? What is CIA doing in your country? How is this Pannu, who is a half American and half Canadian, who is a dual citizen, not a half American, he's a Canadian and American citizen. How is he able to go between America and Canada and nobody seems to know where he is? How threats against the sovereign prime minister, democratically elected prime minister of the world's biggest democracy, come from your land, and you're telling me something called goddamn freedom of expression against our external affairs minister, freedom of expression against our ambassadors, freedom of expression. What is freedom of expression? When does violence and armed violence and terrorism become freedom of expression? When do terrorists have a religion? When do terrorists have a citizenship? And why do terrorists have a profession? So if a plumber is a terrorist, then by that means there is nothing wrong. Osama bin Laden was an engineer, Ayman al-Zawahiri was a doctor, and the three terrorists which you called yesterday, they're all engineers. So you are, by your logic, if a plumber cannot be a terrorist, how can engineer be a terrorist? How can doctor be a terrorist? And whom have we caught yesterday? They're all engineers. So how can they be terrorists? And all the bomb makers, if you look into the history of them, 99% of them for all the terrorist organizations have been engineers. The most deadly terrorists have been engineers. And if you look at ISIS, most of them men are fully educated because they volunteered to go there. 99% of them men were educated, not illiterates. So trying to normalize this terror, trying to give terrorism a color.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that is the word, Sumit. Trying to normalize terror is what exactly Canada is going to be accused of. And that's exactly what they have been doing.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.